Hey guys, Mike here with Practical Training Professionals. If you're new to the channel, here we talk about gear, gadgets, firearms related topics such as disassembly, reassembly, law, all kinds of stuff like that. So thanks for tuning in. We'd appreciate if you hit that subscribe button. Today we're going to be focusing on the Handgun Roster. If you don't know what that is, we're very glad that you found us and that you can find out what that is today on this channel. So without any further ado, guys, let's get into it. All right, guys, like I said, today we're going to be talking about handgun rosters. We're going to talk about what they're intended to do, what other states have handgun rosters, and we're going to pivot. We're going to look at the Maryland Handgun Roster, what the law says about that, how it came to be. We'll talk about how to get a handgun onto the roster, how to check if a handgun is on the roster, and then we're going to pivot. We're going to look around us into the DMV and see what's going on around us. So let's go ahead and dive right in, guys. All right, so I'm over here on Giffords.org. It's a site I come to look at different statistics when it comes to firearms and stuff like that. But in its essence, this paragraph right here summarizes why a handgun roster exists, okay? And I'll go ahead and read it here. So although unintentional or accidental shootings account for a small share of firearm-related mortality and morbidity, these deaths and injuries are highly preventable through proper design of firearms. All right, so it's focused on the design of the firearm. All right, now if we dig in a little bit deeper here, what we go on to learn is that the Federal Consumer Product Safety Act exempts firearms and ammunition from the requirements that apply to other consumer products. So what does that mean? So basically, like the Lego box that says, hey, don't feed this to your kid, or hey, don't lick this paint off the wall, right? Because it's going to make you sick. That kind of stuff doesn't apply to firearms or ammunition. All right. Now, if what they postulate is because the federal government doesn't want to get involved or show their hand really on firearms, that the states are going to take that up. All right. And what it says here is that 7 states and DC have enacted laws to address federally unregulated domestic, what are known as junk guns. Okay. Now, the following jurisdictions have adopted a series of design and safety tests or standards that handguns must meet before they can be manufactured, transferred, or possessed. All right, but the ones that we want to focus on today, guys, is California, DC, Maryland, and Massachusetts. Those 4 states, or 3 states in DC, have enacted an approved handgun list, or what's better known as a handgun roster. All right, guys? So that's the why behind why handgun rosters exist. Now let's dig into Maryland a little bit. All right, now before we do that, I want to tell you guys a little history lesson. So between 1980 and 1988, Maryland saw a surge in violent crime in, can you guess what parts of the state? I know you can. PG County and Baltimore. These ridiculous amounts of crime that were all kind of firearms related. Now, what they found was that a majority of these firearms were what were known as junk guns or Saturday night specials. All right. We still kind of hear that term. It's a gun. It's, you know, really dangerous, sketchy as hell, really. Some of them don't have a trigger guard, or they don't have a mechanical safety, or if you drop them, they go bang. They're really crazy. All right. But what they found was all of this stuff was happening. So they went ahead and put this ballot measure on the November 8th, 1988 ballot. All right. The title was Maryland Manufacture and Sale of Handguns Amendment. It's also known as question 3. It was one of 3 questions on the ballot that year. All right. It essentially prohibited the manufacture and sale of certain handguns and established the Handgun Roster Board. The measure required the board to compile a roster of permitted handguns found to be useful for sporting, self-protection, or law enforcement purposes. This passed in the state 60% to 40%. Now, it went on to become a law, and you know that's what we like to focus on here on this channel, is the law behind the firearms regulations that we all hear about. Because why, guys? All right. Why do we focus on the law? It's because everybody knows a buddy whose cousin is a state trooper, and he said this and they said that, and no, you can't carry that firearm. Well, as we've come to learn, your cousin's buddy wasn't really a cop, and even if he was, he didn't know crap. All right, guys? So it's up to us to understand the law. And that's why we do this on this channel, guys. So if you find value in that, please go ahead, drop down there, hit that thumbs up, hit that subscription button, and turn on notifications. So after it passed the ballot measure, it became a law. Now that law can be found here in Maryland General Assembly. You've seen me use this website before. And again, all this stuff's going to be linked over there at PTPGun.com, guys. So we want to go to Public Safety, Section 5, 406. It's in here somewhere. You miss it if you move too fast because the 400 section is pretty small. All right. So what it says here, after it passed the ballot initiative and it got put into law, all right, what it says here is that a person may not manufacture for distribution or sell a handgun that is not included on the handgun roster in the state. It also says that a person may not sell or offer for sale in a state a handgun manufactured after January 1st, 1985 that is not included on the handgun roster. All right. And then it goes on to talk about the punishments. All right, guys. So essentially you can't manufacture, sell, or offer for sale a handgun that is not on the roster in the state of Maryland. Now, what this law also created was a Handgun Roster Board. So let's pivot into that, guys. All right, so if we go back here to Section 5, TAC 405, it talks about the board and what the board's responsibilities are. All right. Now, when evaluating a firearm to determine if it's going to be on the handgun roster, they look at these characteristics. All right. That's a long list, so I'm going to read them out. Concealability, ballistic accuracy, weight, quality of materials, quality of manufacture, reliability as to safety, caliber. This is a long one, but basically something that could be picked up by scanning capability, like at courthouses and in the airport, or it's used for legitimate sporting activities, self-protection, or law enforcement. Now we get to ask the question this: how do we get a firearm on the roster? And that's what Section C goes on to say, guys. So the board can just magically place a handgun on the handgun roster on its own initiative, right? Or they can place one on the roster based on a successful petition. Now, who can petition? I can. You can. Anyone can. And this is what the petition looks like, guys. It's pretty simple. You fill it out. You submit it to our good friend, Rachel Rosenberg, over here at this email. Again, all of this stuff, this form will be downloadable over there on PTPGun.com. Make sure you're subscribed to the blog over there, guys, so you don't miss out on anything that's happening. And all of these really cool documents, you can download them right from there, guys. So they could put a handgun on the roster under their own initiative, or they have the ability to approve or deny one that was submitted on a petition, okay? Now, when doing so, when you submit that petition, it can take up to 45 days for them to make a decision whether or not to deny it or approve it. They should send it to you in writing whether or not it's been approved or disapproved. And here's the sketchy part, guys. If you don't hear anything back from them for 45 days, you just have to assume that it's been denied. And that's covered right here in paragraph 2. If the board fails to deny or approve a petition within that 45-day time period, the petition shall be considered denied. All right. So what did we touch on? All right. So why does a handgun roster exist? Right. Well, that's to prevent shitty manufactured firearms from getting into the hands of people and possibly reduce, inadvertent, incidental, accidental discharges, whatever you want to call them, taking the lives of young adults and children. All right. So that's kind of the why behind it. All right. So, and then in Maryland, it became law in 1988 on November 8th, 1988 ballot initiative. All right. Question number 3. Then it became law, and we just touched on the law. So now let's touch on how do we find out if a firearm is on the roster? So we've submitted our petition to get a handgun on the roster, and now we want to find out if it's made it on the roster. Now this can apply to a couple different use cases. All right, guys. First, you're shopping for a firearm from a different state, all right, and you want to get it shipped to Maryland. Well, they can't do that if it's not on the handgun roster. Your FFL will not allow that to happen. Secondly, maybe you're moving to Maryland, all right, as a permanent resident, and you have some firearms, handguns, that you're bringing into the state. You need to check the roster before you try to register those firearms. Okay, guys? And that leads me to this point here I want to make. Go ahead and blow back this. So as part of the Firearms Safety Act of 2013, effective 2013, October 1st, a person who moves into Maryland with the intent of becoming a resident shall register all regulated firearms with the state police within 90 days after establishing residency. All right. So if you plan to move here and bring your firearms, you need to make sure they're on the roster. Okay. If you want to buy one and have it shipped here, you need to make sure it's on the roster. How do we do that? That's what we're going to get into here, guys. And it's really pretty simple. There's two ways to do it, and I'll show you how I prefer to do it. So the first thing you want to do is right here, again, links to this will be over in the blog article on PTPGun.com and down in the description below. You want to go ahead and filter by manufacturer right here on this. So we're going to do something simple. So assume I want to buy a Glock 17 MOS from a dealer out in Tennessee and have them ship it here. So I go with my Glock, I look for my 17 Gen 4 MOS. It's right there. It's on the roster. I'm good to go. But what I want to show you guys is that it's a long list. It's not easily digestible, guys. And this is really the only way to get a look at that list, except for going to your FFL, because your FFL receives twice a year an updated list from the Maryland State Police. But this list is ridiculously long. So sometimes it's easier to check the disapproved list first, guys, and that's right here. All right, so on the disapproved list, and these are updated quarterly, okay? And we know that because that's how often they meet. They meet quarterly. Your petitions are due quarterly. They meet quarterly. You could check their minutes all the way back to 2016. You could go in here and click and see what were approved, what were disapproved. The onus of this is on us. But quick way to check if it's on the roster, go to the disapproved list, okay? Some of the later ones that have been disapproved, it'll actually tell you the reason. So, for instance, a lot of these North American arms, the Earl, were disapproved because of reliability. They didn't have a trigger guard. Some of them were disapproved because of the quality of manufacturing, right? Some of them were disapproved because I think this PTAC Bullfrog was because, it was inoperable. They could not get a round to chamber, all right? There's a few things like that. No trigger guard. It's unsafe, right? It's too thick, they say, for concealability. They determined it unsuitable for concealability, so they put it on the disapproved list, right? So that's really the two ways to check. You check there on the disapproved list, or you check here on the approved list. All right, guys? So that's what the law says. That's how to find out or how to get a firearm on the list, right? You can do it by submitting the petition. That's how to find out if a firearm is on the list. You could check those two sites, right? You could also ask your FFL. If you go to a good gun shop like our buddies over there at Gun Monkey's Armory on Charles Street in La Plata, or our friends down here in Charlotte Hall, JMJ Firearms, they should be able to answer those questions for you, all right? But just make sure, because at the end of the day, you're responsible for that firearm and anything that happens to it. All right, guys? So I want to pivot a little bit here. Here in Maryland, we train, PTPGun.com, practical training professionals. You call us either one. It's the same thing. We train people to conceal carry in the state of Maryland, Virginia, and DC, among other states. And the reason we do that is because we don't think that your safety, your ability to defend yourself and your family should end at state lines. All right? So we train people, and we're certified to qualify people for DC conceal carry. Now, what if you carry a firearm in the state of Maryland and you want to carry that firearm in DC? Well, as we saw at the beginning, DC also has a handgun roster. You need to make sure, or how, honestly, should you check to make sure that your firearm is good in Maryland and DC, and I'm about to show you how. All right, so this is a simple one, guys. All right. So in DC, yes, they do have a handgun roster. Here's the law that talks about that. Now, what I want to show you is this right here, this section. The district roster shall include, all right, the California roster, the Maryland roster, and the Massachusetts roster. If you remember, we go back here, those are the only 4 states, 3 states in a district that have rosters. So DC made it super easy. They just copied California's, Maryland's, and Massachusetts. All right. So that's what they accept. The district roster shall include that. All right. Now, we head over here to the DC site, the MPD. That's right. That's who manages the firearms division. It gives you links to what these different rosters are. Now, this one, you're not going to be surprised. It takes you back to this site, which doesn't really show you the handgun roster. It just shows you the disapproved list. You could also click here, and that's going to take you to the list I've already showed you. You could click the Massachusetts firearm roster. Oops, doesn't exist. That's fine. I've already found it for you guys, and this will be downloadable over there at PTPGun.com. So you could use this to cross-reference any of the firearms from this guy here, right? You could cross-reference it here and take it over here and see if it's on this list, right? Either one of those is going to tell you if it's a Maryland firearm, if it's approved in Maryland and it's approved in DC, you're good to go. If it's on the Maryland list, it's automatically included in DC because it said right here in this rule that any pistol listed on the Maryland Department of State Police official handgun roster shall be included, all right? The Massachusetts one, they're also allowed over there in DC, or the California one. You click the California one, this pops up here. There's some clickable stuff, but it ends up taking you to this list here, okay? So this is the California list. Handgun certified for sale and ownership in the state of Maryland, or I'm sorry, the state of California. Again, it's a pretty extensive list. However, it is more easily navigatable than the Maryland list. All right, so in a nutshell, real quick, guys, if you don't mind, drop down there, hit that thumbs up, the subscribe button, turn on notifications. You find value in what we're doing here. So in a nutshell, a handgun roster exists to prevent poorly manufactured firearms from being sold, manufactured, or offered for sale in the state of Maryland and the other states where handgun rosters exist, like California, DC, Massachusetts, and Maryland. In the state of Maryland, the handgun roster came to be because of a ballot initiative in 1988. It then became law and was written in under the Public Safety Code in Section 5 TAC 406. Okay, guys? Now, if you're in the state of Maryland, you're carrying a firearm, you need to make sure that it's on the DC approved firearms list as well. Lucky for you, it is, because DC adopted Maryland's list as well as Massachusetts and California's list. Assume you want to bring a firearm into the state of Maryland. Make sure it's on the list first because the onus is on you and you have 90 days to register that firearm with the state of Maryland. Okay? Further, if your firearm isn't on the list, but you want to get it on the list and it's not on the disapproved list, okay, you have the ability to fill out a petition and submit that. The Handgun Roster Board meets every 3 months, and the list of approved firearms comes out every 3 months. Your FFL will actually get a printed list twice a year, so every 6 months. All right, guys? It's up to you at the end of the day to make sure that you're following the law. As Ryan and I always say, we really want you to win the gunfight, but after that, it's the legal fight that's going to kick your ass, and we don't want to see anybody go to jail, right? It's up to you to understand the law around that firearm that you choose to carry or own, for that matter. One of the things we didn't cover on this video were ghost guns, right? So like if I have a ghost gun, if I build a ghost gun, for instance, if you know what's really popular right now, the P80s, right? The polymer 80s. If I build that, what do I have to do with it? Is it on the approved list? That's coming up. That's in another video, guys. So if you're interested in finding out more about how ghost guns apply in the state of Maryland, make sure you're subscribed, guys, so you don't miss out on that. Another thing we're going to look into and really try to run into the ground is, what if it's a gun that's on the disapproved list and I build it? Right? Is that a felony? Stay tuned. We're going to get into that as well, guys. So again, if you guys like what we're doing here, if you find value in this kind of content, you want to support the channel, the easiest way to do that is to drop down there, give us a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and turn on notifications, guys. That really does help us get to the next level. If you're new to the channel and you stuck around this long, hey, we appreciate you. Drop down the comments. Let us know where you're from. If I missed something, if there's a piece of the puzzle that you didn't quite connect in this video, drop down the comments or send me an email, Mike@PTPGun.com. I'll do my best to get you an answer, guys. I don't have all the answers. I'm pretty good at research. I'm pretty good at making videos. I think I am. So let me know, guys. I'll try to get you something. And if you like what we're doing here, guys, you guys can click this playlist here for all things firearms related. You can click this playlist here for some more Maryland law stuff. And as always, guys, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And with that, as always, learn, defend, prevail. We're out.